Moving on, Pretoria have been handed a boost by the European Union after it was confirmed that South Africa will be removed from the bloc's list of high-risk third country jurisdictions. And the shift could have significant implications for South Africa's economy. Let's provide some context. The list, South Africa's delisting from the Financial Action Task Force grey list in October. This came after more than 2 years of greater economic scrutiny, money laundering and terror finances, but has in recent years worked extensively on reforms, improving the investigation and prosecution of financial crimes, while enhanced transparency has significantly boosted investor confidence and eased international transactions. South African authorities have welcomed the EU decision, but say that further work is still needed. And it is not just South Africa who have been handed this boost by the European Union. Burkina Faso, Mali, Mozambique, Nigeria and Tanzania have also been omitted from the high-risk list. But for South Africa, the continent's largest economy, this comes at a hugely pivotal moment. Heightened tensions with the US following Donald Trump's return to power have hit South Africa's economy harder than most. A 30% tariff was imposed on Pretoria by Washington, impacting South African exports arriving in the US. And then there is the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or AGOA, which expired in September last year. It provided duty-free access to US markets for eligible sub-Saharan African countries on almost 2,000 products. A 3-year extension of the bill, which creates thousands of jobs and boosts Pretoria's economy greatly, was approved.
Breaking now. Brussels has moved. The European Union has officially removed South Africa from its high-risk regulatory list. The decision lands with force. It is immediate. It is strategic. And it is being read around the world as a clear geopolitical signal. South Africa has been cleared. Its financial systems, trade safeguards, and compliance frameworks have been judged stable and credible. Europe has spoken, and the message is unmistakable. This is a win for Pretoria, a reputational victory, a strategic breakthrough, and a sharp reversal for Washington. Because while Europe moves closer to South Africa, the United States finds itself standing apart, alone, isolated. Its tariff pressure has failed, its leverage has weakened, and its influence inside the global trade system is now openly in question. The European decision did not happen quietly. It arrived at a moment of global tension. Trade wars are intensifying, tariff threats are spreading, alliances are shifting, and Europe's move signals a recalibration. South Africa is no longer seen as a risk. It is now viewed as a partner, a credible one. European officials framed the decision as technical, but no one is buying that, because the timing is political, and the consequences are geopolitical. South Africa has spent years tightening oversight, strengthening financial transparency, and aligning with international standards. Brussels noticed, markets noticed, investors noticed, and now the formal label has been removed. This clears the path for smoother banking ties, lower compliance costs, faster capital flows, and deeper trade integration. For South Africa, the impact is immediate. For Washington, it is destabilizing. The United States has spent months escalating tariff pressure across multiple fronts. Steel, automobiles, agriculture, critical minerals. The strategy was meant to force alignment, to bring partners into line, to signal dominance. Instead, it has produced resistance, and now divergence. Europe did not follow Washington's lead. Europe made its own call, and that call directly undercuts the United States narrative. Because while Washington pushed harder, Brussels stepped back. And in doing so, Europe elevated South Africa. This is where the story sharpens. United States tariff pressure was designed to isolate perceived weak links in the global trade system. South Africa was expected to feel the squeeze. Instead, it gained credibility. The European Union reviewed the data, reviewed the reforms, reviewed the risks, and concluded that South Africa did not belong on the list. Not anymore. That conclusion weakens Washington's position. It signals that tariff threats do not dictate European policy. It exposes limits to United States influence, and it reveals fractures inside the Western trade bloc. European officials were careful with their language, but the subtext was clear. Trade decisions will be made in Europe, not dictated from outside, not shaped by pressure campaigns, not driven by tariff ultimatums. In Pretoria, the reaction was swift. Officials framed the decision as validation, as recognition. as proof that reform pays off. South African leaders described it as a turning point, a moment that restores confidence, a moment that reopens doors. International investors responded in real time. Analysts adjusted outlooks. Risk premiums dropped. Capital sentiment improved. South Africa's position inside the global economy strengthened overnight. Meanwhile, in Washington, the silence was noticeable. No celebration, no endorsement, no visible leverage, because the United States had pushed, and Europe had declined to follow. This is not just about one country. It is about control. It is about who sets the rules, and who still has the power to enforce them. For years, the United States used tariffs as a tool of alignment, a pressure lever, a blunt instrument. But this moment shows the limits of that approach. Europe did not bend. Africa did not retreat. And Washington did not get its way. International observers are calling this a pivot, a signal that Europe is recalibrating its relationship with Africa. Less suspicion, more partnership, less conditionality, more engagement. South Africa is the first major test case, and the test has been passed. That matters, because Africa is no longer peripheral. It is central to future growth. Critical minerals, energy transition, manufacturing supply chains, digital markets. Europe understands this, and Europe is moving accordingly. By clearing South Africa, the European Union is sending a message across the continent. Reform is rewarded, engagement is possible, and partnership is on the table. This reshapes Africa, EU economic ties. It accelerates integration. It deepens trust, and it opens space for long-term alignment. For Washington, this is a warning. The United States trade playbook is under stress. Tariff pressure no longer guarantees compliance. Allies are choosing autonomy. Partners are hedging. And global trade alignment is fragmenting. The United States president has repeatedly framed tariffs as leverage, as strength, as a tool to restore balance. But this decision exposes a flaw. Pressure without coordination produces resistance, and resistance produces isolation. Europe's move complicates future United States tariff strategies. It limits Washington's ability to claim unified Western backing. It weakens negotiating positions, and it forces a rethink. Because when Europe breaks ranks, the global system notices. Markets notice, governments notice, and emerging economies take notes. This moment also lands amid escalating global trade wars. China, Europe, the United States, regional blocs. Everyone is recalculating. Supply chains are being redrawn. Strategic partnerships are being reassessed. And trust is becoming currency. South Africa just gained some. Washington just lost some. European analysts describe the decision as pragmatic. But geopolitics is never neutral. By removing South Africa from the high-risk list, Europe has made a choice. A choice to engage rather than exclude. A choice to reward reform rather than punish independence. A choice that reshapes the balance. The United States now faces a harder landscape. Future tariff threats carry less weight. Allies are more cautious, and alignment is no longer automatic. This forces Washington into a corner. Double down on pressure, or adapt. Neither option is easy, because the world is shifting, and the old assumptions no longer hold. Africa is asserting itself. Europe is recalibrating, and the United States is being tested. This is not the end of the story. It is the beginning of a new phase. One where influence is contested, where leverage is diluted, and where trade policy becomes a battlefield of credibility. South Africa stands strengthened. Europe stands autonomous. Washington stands challenged. And the global system watches closely. Because if tariff pressure failed here, it may fail elsewhere. And if Europe continues to diverge, Washington's isolation could deepen. The stakes are rising. The alliances are shifting. And the trade war playbook is under review. What comes next is uncertain. But one thing is clear. The balance of power in global trade is moving. And Washington no longer controls the center of gravity.